What's good, everyone? My name is Sean Thompson. I am a wildlife and environmental photographer, and today I'm going to be giving you 3 quick tips on how you can up your landscape photography game. Now, landscapes are a really beautiful thing. You always love to see them on Instagram, everything like that. They're beautiful. You see these trips people go on and they have these vast vistas filled with trees and the ocean and mountains and stuff. And it can be really enticing. Everybody wants to be able to shoot landscapes, but it can be a little tricky to take the creativity that's in your head and actually translate it to the camera, especially if you're a little newer to photography and you don't quite know what you're doing yet. So I've got 3 quick tips for you on how you can take your landscapes from looking kind of meh to well-composed, great photos. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does mean a lot and it helps support the channel. With that out of the way, let's get right into the tips with our first one, and that's using a small aperture. Now, this might be something a little foreign to anybody brand new to photography, but basically 3 things control the light that comes into your camera. You got aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, and you can control all of these in manual, which you switch to manual. Trust me, switch to manual. But what I mean by shooting in a smaller aperture is shooting at something like f16 to 22. Now what that's gonna do is it's gonna shrink the little diaphragm that's in your camera. It'll go from this big open thing at f like 1.8, this teeny tiny little pinhole. And what that does is it does let a lot less light into your camera, so your photo's gonna turn out a little darker if you don't adjust for it. But a side effect of using a smaller aperture is that you're gonna get a lot more detail in your photo. So you're gonna go from having like a very shallow plane or a very shallow depth of field to a much deeper one where you're gonna get a lot more in focus. You're gonna get all the trees, all the waves, everything like that. That crisp, sharp, super clear landscape photo that you want. Now, with tip number 1, we're already shooting in a smaller aperture. That's gonna bring us to tip number 2, which is gonna be using a slower shutter speed and using that slower shutter speed to your advantage. When you're shooting at a smaller aperture, you're letting in a lot less light. That's gonna make your photo darker. Now, there's 2 ways we can compensate for that. You either up the ISO, which will make your photo look grainier, or you can use a slower shutter speed. Basically, using a slower shutter speed is gonna allow more light in because the shutter, or the sensor of your camera is gonna be exposed a little bit longer. But if you're holding the camera or anything like that, that can allow motion blur in. But you can use this in really cool, creative ways. So say you're taking pictures of the ocean or a lake, or in this example over here, of a waterfall. When you're using that slower shutter speed, you're gonna get that cool motion blur effect that makes the waterfall look like it's still flowing, which adds a lot of movement to your photo. It adds a little bit of dynamicy so that it's not just a still, static, rigid, how many other synonyms can I think of, photo. It just makes it look better. Now, that brings us to the 3rd thing you're gonna need to do, or the 3rd tip for landscape photography, and that's use a tripod. Please use a tripod. Just stick the camera on there. You stick it on there. It keeps everything locked in. You just set it. I can't show you my tripod because it's what I'm filming on right now, but please, tripod. And if you don't have a tripod, you can always set your camera down somewhere relatively level. Try and get you always want horizon lines to look level. Well, not always, cameras aren't, but horizon lines looking level is generally a good thing. It's generally liked. So try and find a nice level surface if you don't have a tripod to set your camera down on. That way you can do those other 2 things and still get a nice, clear, good image. And I do have a quick little bonus for you, and that is use a remote shutter. What a remote shutter is this little device. You can actually use your phone in a lot of cases with newer cameras, but it basically trips the shutter for you so you don't have to click the button on the camera. And that's gonna make it so even just pressing the button shakes the camera and can cause like photo to turn out a little wobbly, a little shaky. Eliminate all that. We're done with all of that. No more shaky landscape photos in 2023. We're done with them. We're leaving them in 2022. Use a tripod, use a remote shutter. It's gonna help. Trust, it's the little things, you know, just the little things. Now, none of these tips are hard and fast rules. You don't have to always do this. If you think you have a creative way to use a larger aperture, or you think you need a faster shutter speed for the type of subject you're shooting, maybe there's a bird or a whole bunch of birds that have been coming through frame and you wanna like get them locked in, absolutely. Photography is an art. Arts don't have rules. They have guidelines that you should maybe abide by, but there's no hard and fast rule that says 100% this is the only way to do this. These are just things that definitely help and will help you kind of find where you can bend the rules. But yeah, so use a smaller aperture. It's gonna make those pictures look super, super crispy. You're gonna get all the details that you want. You're gonna be able to zoom in and see trees and stuff like that, as opposed to a green blur in the background. Use a slower shutter speed and use it to your advantage. Like, you could use a shutter speed on a nice day of like 1/100th of a second, 1/80th of a second. Those are, I would consider them slower. But if you're shooting, say, waterfalls or something like that, or the ocean where the tide's coming in and out, and you wanna make that water look super, super silky smooth, use that slower shutter speed to your advantage. Slow it right down. You might need an ND filter for this, but it'll allow you to use a lower ISO, which will make your photo less grainy, and it'll allow you to use that little bit of motion blur to make a really interesting composition. And the third one, please use a tripod. I know it sounds simple and it sounds ridiculous. And then yeah, remote shutter. They're really, really cheap too. I think they're like maybe $50 to $100 at your local camera shop or at Amazon or anything like that. Pick one up. Again, free apps on your phone too for a lot of newer cameras. Try that, test it out, see what you like. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you so much for checking out the video. But don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed and you want to see more. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.